Thanks so much for coming to be with us for this special night. This event is the highlight of my year, every year, so I'm grateful to all of you for being here. And it's all the more so tonight because of our honorees, Salena Copeland and Secretary Tom Perez. I would like to give a particular welcome and thanks to John and Terry Levin. Many of you have asked me, who are John and Terry Levin? And why would they be so generous and so committed as to endow an actual center? Well, they are here, and I would like all of us to give them a warm round of applause as well. I have a few very brief other thank yous before we move into the rest of the program. I could not be more proud or more pleased to work with the staff of the Levin Center, of course. Anna, TT, Mike, Oscar, yes, you inspire me every day, so thank you so much for being part of the team. And I want to say a thank you and kind of a farewell to Holly Parrish, who just left us last week to join the Office of Student Affairs. Holly, you, like everybody else at the Levin Center, always made all of us just better at what we were, so we will miss you very much. I'd also love to thank the Munger Catering team. Thank you so much for working with us every year on this event and for your wonderful attention to detail and service. And no public event for me at Stanford would be complete unless I thanked Dean Liz McGill, who is one of the most amazing stalwart partners and advocates for public interest students at this law school. Anything that we do that is successful is all because of her partnership. So I think the program is pretty clear, but in case somebody needs a roadmap, I'm going to make some very, very brief introductory remarks of the amazing Salena Copeland shortly. Salena then will make some remarks, and then the dean will come up and introduce our National Public Service Awardee, Secretary Tom Perez. And that will actually end our program. So thinking about John and Terry Levin, as well as our honorees tonight, has led me to this train of thought very quickly. The power of individuals pursuing a path of justice can really never be discounted. They are each amazing individuals who have done so much. What they remind me of, these individuals, is that justice is not theoretical. You're not going to find it in random abstract thoughts. To be meaningful, justice must be personified, and these individuals do personify it. It's a living thing that requires skin in the game. It requires boots on the ground and a commitment to guiding values and principles. It is a living thing created by kindness, by hope, by community, and advanced when we all act as our best selves to uphold it. The work of the Levin Center is always motivated by these impulses because of our founders, and it's inspired by all of you, the public service that is performed by our students, our faculty, who I thank for being here, and our alumni. Now, one particular alumna I am very proud to be introducing tonight. Salena Copeland is my friend, and she is a graduate of the class of 2007, and she is this year's recipient of the Miles L. Rubin Public Interest Award. This award was established by the children of Miles Rubin, who is one of the earliest and most generous supporters of our loan repayment assistance program, as many of our students know. And each year, the Rubin family selects the honoree who will receive this award based on an evaluation of someone who has advanced justice and social change and who has identified systemic solutions to broad societal problems. Salena was selected for the award in part because she now serves as the executive director of the Legal Aid Association of California, a position that she assumed actually not even 7 years after she graduated from this law school. She started her legal services career as an Equal Justice Works AmeriCorps Fellow, during which time she helped to launch the Justice Bus program that many of you have participated in or will participate in during your time here, that brings necessary legal services to parts of rural California that otherwise would not be served. In her current role at LAC, she engages in and coordinates statewide legislative and administrative advocacy and leads a team of staff who provide technical assistance, training, and resource sharing for its members. So that sounds a little abstract, right? What does this mean concretely? Her partner, Matthew Levin, a 2006 graduate of the law school and chief legal counsel with the Animal Legal Defense Fund, describes watching her stream numerous legislative hearings simultaneously, late into the night, sometimes yelling at the computer, to make sure that she's on top of the state's consideration of policies or budget items that impact services for poor Californians. Salena knows that every budget cycle, every legislative session is another opportunity for advocacy. So recently, Salena organized a successful statewide effort to increase California's Equal Access Fund, bringing $5 million new dollars to support the state's legal nonprofits. She also orchestrated the campaign that repealed a sunset provision on a separate fund that provides up to $9 million a year for the legal services community. Salena has taken her experiences in client representation, program development, and policy advocacy to envision systemic reform and improvements that support the 100 legal nonprofits providing free legal services in California. So why does that matter? It's estimated that there are 6,000 individual poor clients who would be eligible for individual legal aid lawyer, for each individual legal aid lawyer in California. 6,000 to 1. That's why it matters. Salena has taken on the enormous responsibility to increase resources for each of those lawyers and the agencies that employ them, with the goal of expanding the overall availability of lawyers for indigent Californians. Now, Salena's professional accomplishments are extensive, and they are noteworthy. But those accomplishments could only be attained because of the personal attributes and values that inform every aspect of her life. Passionate, committed, trustworthy, fierce, compassionate. These are the words that commonly came up in Salena's nomination and in the comments that were sent to me by her colleagues, friends, and professors. I will just share a few of them with you. One classmate, Erica Blackman-Hitchings, who is here somewhere with us tonight, noted particularly that from the first day they met at Stanford, they were in the same small section, Salena struck her as the person who most knew why she was here. Erica said there was never any doubt in her mind or in ours, any of her classmates, that she was going to commit herself to public service and that she was going to be in the trenches helping individuals. A lot of us were trying to find ourselves in law school, but Salena knew who she was and what she wanted, and it showed. She had an air of confidence about her while still being grounded, approachable, and humble, and that has carried through to this day. Juliet Brody, our Associate Dean of Clinical Education, described to me that as a student in the community law clinic in East Palo Alto, Salena's approach to lawyering was never one of gatekeeper with rarefied knowledge, but instead as a fierce advocate who valued and held up her clients' experiences while educating them about their rights under the law. Salena also was instrumental in launching the clinic's expungement practice, which is flourishing even today, 10 years later. Salena's former boss and current colleague, Julia Wilson, who's also another alumna of this institution and with us here tonight, said it was a stroke of fortune that brought Salena to One Justice and as an AmeriCorps Fellow, but that luck had nothing to do with Salena's promotion to program attorney and then directing attorney and then ultimately executive director at LAC. She described Salena as having the incredible and unusual blend of big picture strategic thinking, talent, smarts, and a can-do attitude. She describes Salena as a real deal legal services hero. And finally, last year's Rubin awardee, Brian Blaylock, could not be with us tonight because he's celebrating some friend's 90th birthday. I don't know. So he sent me this comment to share with all of you and to communicate to Salena. To me, Brian wrote, Salena embodies the Welsh saying that translates into, to be a leader, build bridges. It takes a unique skill set to approach problems with the mindset to build bridges. When faced with scarcity or injustice, some of us rage, some of us tear down, Some seek the limelight and grandstand. Some of us, dare I say it, just complain. Salena instead builds bridges and has been doing so the entire decade that I have known her, in law school and since graduation. Salena sees bridges where others may see the impassable, knowing where bridges can be built even if no one else can see them. He closes, we need more Salenas. So I certainly agree with that. We do need more Salenas, and I am quite certain that some of them are in this room. But for now, I am very pleased to introduce and honor this very singular Salena and to present her with the Miles L. Rubin Public Interest Award.
Thank you, Diane. So when I was in high school, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I actually got a year-long internship at my local DA's office, and my mentor was amazing. I got to help pick juries for trials. I got to work in the deferred adjudication program, helping young adults who just messed up once or twice, helping them get out of the system. And he taught me a lot, kind of a clueless white Southern girl, about racial profiling, because my mentor constantly got pulled over by the East Texas police because of the kind of car he drove and the color of his skin, because they suspected he was a drug dealer. He was not. But throughout this experience, I learned a lot. However, despite that leadership and all of those eye-opening experiences, I found the work crushingly boring. And after that year, I did not want to be a lawyer. So I thought about a lot of other professions, spent some time as an AmeriCorps, prior to law school, an AmeriCorps fellow, doing literacy work. I did a lot of different things. But yet, despite that, here I am, a lawyer. And not only am I a lawyer, I am really proud of being a lawyer. As Diane mentioned, I'm the executive director of the Legal Aid Association of California, and my role is just to support the entire system of the roughly 100 nonprofits that provide free legal services to low-income Californians, to people with disabilities, and to older Californians. So all I do is make that system stronger. What that means is that some days I'm planning a conference down in Riverside to make sure that legal aid advocates down there have access to the expertise and the training they need to serve their clients better, because I care about the clients who live down in Riverside just as much as I care about the clients who live up here in San Francisco. It might also mean that I am up in the middle of the night watching multiple budget hearings, pretending to live tweet, but really just Facebook posting over and over again. Or I'll work with the Assembly Judiciary Committee, tinkering with a bill that I think would, really could be improved to better help low-income Californians if we just change a couple words here and there. It's not really glamorous work. Other things I do, I may spend time working on an amicus brief so that the legal aid community here in California can stand united in a single voice on an issue. I'm working on one of those issues now. But I would say that very frequently what my work means is that I have the opportunity to have work that really can make a huge change in California. And sometimes I get so excited, I kind of lose my breath because I'm just so amazed at the place I am now and what I can do because of my position. So 2 recent projects I just want to highlight, and one of them Diane mentioned as well, because just the work I'm so proud of my organization. One of them is that many of you may have heard of the Federal Victims of Crime Act funding, VOCA funding. Here in California, the funding actually was limited mostly to district attorneys' offices, my old stomping grounds from high school. And other states were using it for other things, but not California. But through my organization's advocacy, we were actually able to open up about $10 million for legal services here in California. And what that means is that now a person who's a victim of crime may be able to go to his or her local legal aid organization and get help with housing, get help with public benefits, get help with immigration matters. Many programs actually hired social workers or victim services coordinators. They're really looking at different models because of this funding stream. So it's really going to make a big difference, helping people be more independent and help them escape abusive situations. So that's one thing that I'm very proud of, and one of our attorneys worked very hard on that issue. Lauren is here tonight. Another thing that we worked on that I'm so proud of that Diane mentioned is increasing the Equal Access Fund. The Equal Access Fund was created back in 1999, so it's probably as old as some of your younger siblings. And when it was created, it was $10 million of state general funds. And when it was created, California was a leader. Most other states didn't have a lot of money of general fund support that they were putting to civil legal aid. So other states started following California's model, and other states started doing better because they started recognizing how important civil legal aid is as a legal safety net for low-income people looking for housing, looking for how to escape abuse, looking for public benefits, those kind of core poverty law issues. And other states like New York are doing so much better than California. So the legal aid community in California really rallied around, and we were able to, I called executive directors, I emailed executive directors talking points, I told them who to talk to and whenever there are key budget hearings that they needed to talk to their local legislator today to make sure he or she knew what was happening. And we did it. This year we were actually able to convince the legislature, but more importantly, we were able to convince this governor, which is a really hard sell, that civil legal aid needed more money. Because with budget issues, it is hard to convince our governor to put more money into anything. But we did, $5 million. And it's so exciting to me because what that means on the ground is that some programs in California will be able to hire a new attorney. So when Diane mentioned that there's 6,000 to 1 legal aid attorney in California, that's kind of the statewide average. But in some parts of California, it's really closer to like 30,000 people to 1 in some of the rural parts. And I know Jose Padilla, who's executive director of California Rural Legal Assistance, said in some areas he would be able to hire a second attorney. So he'd be able to bring that number down to 15,000 to 1. And that's a big deal in rural parts of California. So I am so proud of the work that we were able to do, and I wasn't able to do it, or wouldn't have been able to do it if it weren't for my position at LAC. People, a lot of executive directors turn to LAC to say, is this an issue I'm supposed to care about? Am I supposed to contact my legislator? Who's my legislator? Can I contact them on this issue? I can't remember if I'm restricted or not. And that's what my organization does, is answer those questions so people rally at the right time on the right issue. So, and also, when I'm watching those budget hearings in the middle of the night, sometimes I'm also frantically texting with my board members in Sacramento, asking them to go to the Capitol right now, put their suit back on, put their contacts back in, and go and talk to legislative staff, because now is the time that it matters when we need to get more votes on our side. So I wouldn't have my current job without Stanford, and that's not just saying like, oh, a Stanford degree opens up doors. Stanford opened up many doors for me. So I chose Stanford because of the LRAP program. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I went to law school, which is probably a good thing given the fact that my job now is so strange to describe. I would never have thought of this job. But I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do good. I had the can-do attitude. I had an AmeriCorps experience where I knew I wanted to hit the ground running, doing something. And I knew that I needed LRAP. I didn't want to have doors closed to me and opportunities closed to me because I had $100,000 or $150,000 law school debt holding me back. So I chose Stanford for LRAP. And after time in the community law clinic and after time working with professors on other criminal justice issues, my first nonprofit job after Stanford was a job offer, as Diane mentioned, as an AmeriCorps attorney, an Equal Justice Works AmeriCorps legal fellow. But it was tied to the AmeriCorps salary. And for anyone who's done any stints in AmeriCorps, that AmeriCorps salary is very small. So as I considered the job offer from Julia Wilson, who is not only a Stanford alumna herself, she also accepted this award several years ago, I called Diane and I said, this job doesn't pay very much, but it sounds exciting, and I get to go back to Fresno. I really like going to Fresno. Should I take the job? And Diane said she couldn't tell me anything about the job. She didn't have any clue if it would, what I would be doing. But she knew Julia was the executive director. It was then called Public Interest Clearinghouse, now Injustice. And she trusted that Julia would give me a good experience. She said, I trust her to do well by you. So, based on that recommendation, and honestly because of the financial safety net of LRAP, because my partner was also an LRAP recipient at the time, I was able to take a gamble. And so I accepted an AmeriCorps position. I learned so much in that year with Julia working at One Justice. I learned about the safety net. I learned what IOLTA meant. I learned that statutes mattered when you talk about funding for civil legal aid. And through Julia, I came to my current organization, the Legal Aid Association of California, where I'm now executive director. And I draw on my Stanford network all the time. I mean, Diane said what Blaylock says about me, but I'm always harassing Brian Blaylock to see if we can meet up for lunch, if we can meet up for brunch, if we can get together on the weekends. We do Thanksgiving together every year. I have Katie Spielman in my class. I'm actually guest lecturing at her class at Berkeley Law later this month. Other friends. Oh goodness, there's so many friends I call on all the time. Not only my public interest friends from law school, like Cindy Liu or Craig Siegel or Brian Bilford, I also call on my friends who are now in government practice or firm practice because they're so great friends to have when you need some pro bono work. So don't discount your law firm friends because you will never know how important they will be to you 10 years from now. So, of course, as Diane mentioned, the most important Stanford grad of all to me is my partner, Matthew Levin. We've actually been together for nearly 18 years, so we did not meet at Stanford, although everyone assumes that. I like to say we met in public school, but we survived private school. So we've been together for nearly 18 years. We have 2 kids. We've moved across country several times, and yet we've both ended up people who are very similar to who we were when we met 18 years ago. He now works at the Animal Legal Defense Fund. He's an amazing litigator. He has a moot tomorrow morning because he's working on some oral argument. He's always writing briefs, whereas I'm always typing emails and frantically texting other attorneys. So we're very different roles. But he couldn't be here tonight. So I just want to say that we had a really crap weekend. Both of our children have been sick, one of them and then the other, and then now the other one's sick again since last Wednesday. Matthew's dad actually took a spill. He fell and he was hospitalized. He's now okay, but he was in the hospital for 2 days. I have been completely buried in this amicus project I'm working on that's due tomorrow. I have a foundation grant due tomorrow to expand Law Help California. It's a statewide resource and referral website we run to help increase access to justice for all Californians, whether you qualify for free legal aid or if you qualify and you still can't get an attorney. There's just a lot going on. But by far the worst thing that happened to this weekend is that we actually had to put our cat to sleep. And she's 20 years old. She's been with us through a whole lot of life changes, and she was my best friend in law school. So for those of you who don't live on campus and who have animals at home, she sat in my lap through reading tons of case books. She was in my lap for all of my very, very late nights when I worked on papers. And law school is really hard. And there were a lot of nights where I cried because it's really stressful, and she was there through all of it. And it was a really hard decision, but it was time. And the first person I called when I realized that Saturday was time and it had to happen, I actually called a Stanford grad. And I asked him to take my kids with 0 notice, my 2 sick kids, and he did it. And so I was able to spend time with my love kitty at the end. So I draw on my Stanford network all the time in really unexpected ways, whether it's having a home for Thanksgiving every year or having somewhere where I can drop off my kids with no notice, or whether it's calling a friend for some pro bono advice and she doesn't really have to work me through her system. She can just take me on as a pro bono client. We don't really need to do a conflicts check because it's me. Your network here is amazing. And we all have really crap weekends. We all have really bad weeks, bad months, or even really tough years where we're taking care of our aging grandparents or our parents or sick children or sick pets, and bad things happen. And really the strength of the network that you build here, for all of you students who are here, can serve you so well in the future, and you never know when you're going to have to call on your friends. So, my network is amazing. I have friends for life because I chose Stanford because of the LRAP program. It's amazing the people who I know and who open doors for me all the time, who will meet me for lunch with no notice because we met each other here at Stanford a decade ago. So I'm so grateful to the Rubins who are not here and to the Levins for their support too. For everyone who supports the system of public interest students at Stanford, thank you for the award. And also thank you to everyone who supports the LRAP recipients, because without LRAP, I wouldn't have my two beautiful children. One of them you could see on the Facebook page. He's got the I'm an LRAP baby, because he truly is an LRAP baby. With a double LRAP family, those really are LRAP babies. So just thank you, and I'm so honored to get the award today. I feel like so much of my work is actually kind of behind the scenes. I don't really get credit for my work, so to get the honor, especially from Stanford, just is really touching for me. So thank you.
Thank you for those wonderful remarks, Salena. And many congratulations and many thanks for all that you're doing for people of California who need you more than ever right now. I have the great privilege of being able to introduce to you Secretary Tom Perez, the Secretary of Labor, and to present him with the school's National Public Service Award. First, though, I want to echo Diane Chin and welcome all of you, and also acknowledge the incredible leadership of John and Terry Levin. The support that our pro bono students, our public service students, and our public interest students have at this law school is made possible by your family. Not only the support you've given us, but also the vision you gave us 10 years ago, which was to instill in all of our law students a commitment to give back throughout their careers and to creating the opportunities and resources necessary to allow those who want to go into the public interest to do so. So we thank you. We could not be what we are today without you. I can assure the Levin family and all gathered here tonight that the staff of our Levin Center is very much upholding and advancing the vision that you articulated a decade ago. T.T. Liu, Anna Wang, Mike Wynn, and their tremendous leader, Diane Chin, who never puts her name in these kind of remarks, an incredible leader, are daily bringing to their work and the commitment they have to the law school to support our public service students, our public interest students, to work with them to achieve all that they want to achieve. So, like Diane, I also want to thank the staff of the Levin Center, but also thank Diane. So, Secretary Perez, I know a secret about you that I learned from your brother, Robert Perez, who's here tonight with his wife and two kids, and that is that your birthday was Friday. He was a little ambiguous about who was older and who was younger, so we're not gonna settle that. But happy birthday! We're very grateful that you're spending the days after your birthday with us. Secretary Perez is the nation's 26th Secretary of Labor. He's the son of Dominican immigrants, and he grew up in Buffalo, New York. In fact, he has frequently credited his patience and his optimism to the fact that he's a lifelong fan of the Buffalo Bills. A graduate of Brown University and Harvard Law School, Secretary Perez lives in Maryland with his wife, Anne Marie Studenmeyer, who is an attorney at the Washington Legal Clinic for the Homeless, along with their 3 children. And he's a coach of their basketball and their baseball teams, I'm told. Secretary Perez's work in the cabinet is informed by working at every level of government. After graduating from Harvard Law School, Secretary Perez clerked and then entered government service as a federal prosecutor in the Department of Justice, where he focused on prosecuting civil rights cases, including cases against white supremacist gangs. This was followed by taking on the Deputy Assistant Attorney General role under Attorney General Janet Reno. From there, he became a principal advisor to U.S. Senator Ted Kennedy, and then he was appointed director of the Office of Civil Rights for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Shifting his level of government but not his focus, Secretary Perez then ran for and was elected to the Montgomery County Council as its first ever Latino member, where he pushed legislation to address predatory lending, affordable health care, and access to prescription drugs, among others. Following his county service, the secretary was selected to head the Maryland's Department of Labor, Licensing, and Regulation. There, he led efforts to address workplace fraud, and specifically the tactic of some employers of misclassifying workers as independent contractors instead of employees in order to deny them benefits and overtime. In 2009, the secretary returned to federal government service when he was selected by President Obama to serve as Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights at the Department of Justice. I gather at the time he described himself as a recidivist because he started his career at DOJ in the same division. Perhaps not surprising for one who's focused his career on civil and workers' rights, one aspect of the secretary's leadership has been noted by both his current staff and his former staff, is that he's remarkable at addressing employee morale and improving workplaces that he himself oversees. When Secretary Perez returned to the DOJ Civil Rights Division, he identified two priorities. First, he wanted to restore, and then he wanted to transform that division. Internally, he wanted to address the fact that between 2003 and 2007, the division had lost over 70% of its career attorneys, many of whom were longtime civil rights litigators. He totally revamped the hiring process, returned the honors program hiring decisions to the career staff, and expanded the litigation sections, employment, voting, housing, and special litigation to ensure that the division could enforce all of the laws within its authority. Recognizing that the civil rights issues in the 21st century need to be addressed by every tool available, the secretary also ensured that his staff would use all of the available strategies to address discrimination, including collaborating across agencies, engaging in community engagement, and focusing on new and emerging issues. He led efforts to expand the scope of federal hate crimes laws, as well as Title IX to cover gender, gender identity, and disability. He oversaw the division's investigation of when Trayvon Martin was killed in Florida. He sent staff to look into the actions of Sheriff Arpaio in Maricopa County, Arizona. These are just a few of his many accomplishments at the Civil Rights Division. As Secretary of Labor, Tom Perez has continued to improve the conditions of working people all across this country. Under his leadership, the Department of Labor updated overtime regulations under the Fair Labor Standards Act to extend overtime pay rules to an estimated 4.2 million workers who were previously exempt, including home health workers, for people with disabilities, and the elderly. In the face of intense opposition, the Secretary championed changes in the regulation of retirement plan financial advisors, requiring them to give advice only in the best interest of the worker and to set aside their own potential for financial gain. Working with the President, the Fair Pay Safe Workplaces Executive Order was issued, requiring federal contractors to disclose their own history of employment and labor law violations to assure that taxpayer dollars would not be used to reward companies with repeat violations. Again, these are just a couple of examples of what the Secretary has accomplished at the Department of Labor. Secretary Perez was selected for our National Public Service Award not only because his career in civil rights and workers' rights is lengthy and accomplished, but also because it highlights the nimbleness of law to make change. Whether he was making small, pretty technical improvements to regulating an industry or interpreting a law anew entirely to address current community needs, or bringing the power of an agency to litigate and ensure sweeping changes to police departments. These are the tools of the legal system that he's used, and his analysis as a legal advocate that he brought to bear to solve ongoing dilemmas. In preparing for this introduction, I reviewed some of the Secretary's former public appearances. There's one phrase that stands out. He uses it all the time: we can do better. Another is the dignity of work. I'm incredibly honored to present our National Public Service Award to a man whose career shows the dignity of our profession to do better. Secretary Perez.
Dean, thank you so much. Good evening. It's an honor to be here. Dean, thank you for your kind remarks, and thank you for your tremendous leadership here. And again, Dean Chin, thank you for everything you do. Every day you get up, you're trying to make sure that everybody has access to opportunity. And I remember my law school days, your glide path in terms of the number of people you touch, bless you, will be felt. Bless all of you. Okay, I don't want to single that person out. You know, I'd be remiss if I didn't say something about Pam Carlin, because I'm hard pressed to think of a more accomplished voting rights lawyer. And my only regret is that the Department of Justice wasn't big enough for the two of us, because basically right when I got confirmed is when Pam was able to get over to the Department of Justice. So I never had the privilege of working with her, but I know we traded up when we traded Perez for Carlin at the Department of Justice. And they certainly traded up. And David Hayes and I have a long history together. So David and I were, among other things, in a foxhole in 2008, actually, during the Obama campaign. And I saw firsthand what a tremendous individual he is and tremendous leader. So thanks for what you did at the Department of Interior, and thanks for what you've been doing here. And you know, as someone who spent my entire life in public service, I want to pay a special thanks to the Levin family, because the ripples that you have brought forth here at Stanford are too numerous to mention. And the people that you touch is, as a result of those investments, is just remarkable. My brother and I'm the youngest of five. My brother, you know, our parents taught us that if you want to get to heaven, you got to have letters of reference from folks living in the shadows who need help. And you know what? Because of your investments, there's a lot of folks in the shadows who are moving into the sunshine. So thank you again for what you do day in and day out to enable students to go down on a spring break and help people who are detained because they are immigrants seeking entry into this country. And you get down there and you're inspiring people, not only to help people for a week, but you're lighting that fire forever. And so I'm very, very appreciative. And I've got some DOL colleagues, in addition to my brother and his wife, my sister-in-law, whose birthday was also the same day as mine. We're twins. And I won't get into it. But I will say thank you to folks at the department. One quick question before I get going. How many of y'all are students? Can you just raise your hand? Oh, my. Okay. Well, I have bad news for you. I'm going to give you a homework assignment before I'm done, okay? I'm not going to give it to you now, but it is the same assignment I used to give to my students back in the day when I was teaching. You know, Hubert Humphrey once said that the moral test of our strength as a nation is how we treat those in the dawn of life, our children, how we treat those in the twilight of life, our seniors, and how we treat those in the shadows of life. And when I worked at the Department of Health and Human Services, I saw the bust at the Humphrey Building of Hubert Humphrey, and I saw that aspirational statement every single day. And it really, for me, in a nutshell, is what has inspired me to do the work that I've had the privilege of doing. And meaning no disrespect to the late, great Lou Gehrig, I actually feel like the luckiest person on the face of the earth, because I've had the opportunity to take the tools that I had the privilege of gaining through college and graduate school and put them to work in the public interest, making sure that people were no longer in the shadows, making sure that young people had access to equal educational opportunity, and making sure that everybody could get both an infrastructure of economic opportunity that was viable and an infrastructure of democracy that was viable. And I really believe firmly that the law can be used to write people in or out of our national story. And our national story begins with what I believe is the most impactful dependent clause in America. And it's the first dependent clause of our Constitution. We, the people, in order to form a more perfect union. Our nation's journey has been that timeless journey to form a more perfect union. And we have seen time and time again, there have been moments where the law has been used to write people in to the American experience, and the law has been explicitly used to keep people out. And that, to me, is why I wanted to be a lawyer, because truth be known, all my siblings are doctors, and I had to promise never to be a plaintiff's personal injury lawyer. So I kept that promise. But I also wanted to be a lawyer because I saw that lawyers were change agents. Not that doctors aren't change agents, but I saw that so many people who were working to form that more perfect union, whether it was Alexander Hamilton or Aaron Burr or others, and there's a new biography of Aaron Burr, so you might want to give him another look. And if you think politics were ugly last night, they were in a duel. So we can digress and have a conversation about the tools of engagement. But that is not the purpose of this address tonight. The purpose of this is really to talk about what I've learned, lessons that I've learned over the course of a quarter century or so in public service. Because I truly do believe, as I said before, that I have been the luckiest person on the face of the earth, because I've been involved in the intersection of labor issues and civil rights issues. And when you think about the intersection of labor and civil rights, I immediately think about the March on Washington, because the March on Washington was indeed the March for Jobs and the March for Justice. Civil rights and labor rights have been inextricably intertwined for generations. When Dr. King wrote a number of his most famous speeches, he wrote them in Solidarity House in Detroit with the likes of Walter Reuther and other members of the labor movement. And when we had the march in Selma, that I will talk about again shortly, who bankrolled that march? It was members of the labor movement, the infamous events of Bloody Sunday. And so the labor rights and civil rights movements are indeed inextricably intertwined. I am a man, I am a woman, was the cry. But it was also, I deserve to be treated with dignity. Because you know what? Just because I am a garbage man, said the sanitation workers in Memphis, doesn't mean you can treat me like trash. Just because of the color of my skin doesn't mean that that should determine my destiny. And so they've been inextricably intertwined for generations. And I watched that, and I've seen that. And in my career, I have just had the remarkable opportunity to have a front row seat to many of the contemporary battles in our nation's journey to form that more perfect union. And I've learned a number of lessons, the first of which is success is always a joint venture between people inside government and people outside government, working together. You look at the Voting Rights Act, which Pam Carlin knows more about than just about any person in America. And you see that that was the leadership inside government of the likes of LBJ, coupled with the advocacy of people like John Lewis and Dr. King and others. I have a photo of myself with John Lewis, who's one of my heroes. And he tells the story with great pride of when he was organizing down in South Carolina. And his parents said to him, what are you doing? I'm worried that you're going to get in trouble. And he said, no. I'm not causing trouble. I'm causing good trouble. And that's what John Lewis calls us to do. And because he was causing good trouble with so many other people of different races, different faiths, they came together. But they would not have been successful without that leadership inside government, LBJ and others. And so I don't know where your journey will take you. For me, I've enjoyed working inside government, and I've been inside and outside. As somebody in these movements. And I've enjoyed and spent more time inside government, more time within the executive branch, because, quite frankly, we can help people at scale. And that is what is neat. What did you do this week, Dad? Well, we helped 2 million home health workers, mostly women of color on food stamps, get basic decency by passing a regulation that enables them to get access to minimum wage and overtime benefits. That, for me, is the definition of a good week. And that's because we can help them. I have great regrets during many of these processes because, frankly, I slept through administrative law, and I've had to learn a lot about that in my job. And so thank God that I have a good set of folks in our solicitor's office. But, lesson number one, it is a joint venture. Nothing ever worth fighting for is going to be done in isolation. Lesson number two, laws are only as good as the political will of the people who enforce them. And the laws that are already on the books can be abused and misused. And I saw that firsthand. When I got back into the Civil Rights Division, it was a daunting moment. I came into government in 1989. I'm proud to say that I served as a career civil servant in the Bush 1 administration and in the Clinton administration. And I'm proud of the work I did in the Clinton administration. The Civil Rights Division has a long and storied history of enforcing the law in Republican and Democratic administrations alike. Yes, there were differences at the margins in a Republican or a Democratic administration, but there were a lot of constants. And I loved the fact that I could go there in the Bush administration and do so much good work. And then I came back in 2001. And frankly, if you were to read the Inspector General report, they recommended one of my predecessors for criminal prosecution. And sometimes, you don't have to repeal laws. You just don't enforce them. Or you reinterpret them in ways that are inconsistent with their original intent, letter, and spirit. And I saw that both at the Department of Justice and I saw that at the Department of Labor. One of the most remarkable cases, and I didn't believe it when they first told me when I came to the Department of Labor, was a wage and hour case in which our investigators were going in to investigate a very large retailer, a super large retailer, on allegations of violations of child labor laws. And this super large retailer, who shall go unnamed, we reached an agreement with them in the Bush administration. And the agreement was this: before we, the Department of Labor, ever went in again to investigate child labor cases at this very large retailer, if I hadn't mentioned that, we would give them notice in advance. And when I learned about that, I couldn't help but think about my first year or so on the job as a frontline prosecutor in the District of Columbia. And I was thinking, that was an odd investigative strategy. Because it was kind of like, we had a significant drug set of challenges in the District of Columbia. But I never thought about working with local law enforcement to announce to the drug dealers in advance when we were going to be conducting an undercover operation. I mean, that's brilliant. I should have thought of that. But I never did. But I honestly asked somebody to double check that because I didn't believe it. And so laws are only as good as the will of the people who are enforcing them. And we need folks like you who are there, because you know what? There is so much good you can do. And I am so proud of the work that the dedicated career professionals, the spine of the Department of Justice, the spine of the Department of Labor, do day in and day out. I have seen so much good work being done by so many people. And we've been able to do, you mentioned the retirement space. There was something like $50 or $60 million spent in the effort to stop us from doing something that was pretty radical. Okay, you're all lawyers or soon-to-be lawyers. I come from a family of doctors. If you are a lawyer or a doctor, you have a legal and ethical obligation to put your client's best interest first. And we put forth a very, very radical rule, which said that if you were providing financial advice to someone, and by the way, you are my target market, because y'all are going to have 401ks and IRAs, because the world of defined benefit plans is dying. It is not as much as it used to be. The IRA 401k world is an $11 trillion industry. But you may not be aware of the fact that the people providing you with that advice don't have an obligation to put your interests first. They don't need to behave like lawyers and doctors. And so we did that radical thing. We said that you need to put your client's best interest first. And the creative lawyers, we get sued with regularity. One of the claims in one of the lawsuits was a First Amendment claim. I love that one. I have a First Amendment right to give conflicted advice to my clients that will line my pockets at your expense. Those creative lawyers. I didn't look to see where they went to law school. I just want you to know that, okay? But I bring this up because we do important stuff at scale at both the Labor Department and in the Civil Rights Division. And it is so critically important to have folks like you there because you really make a difference. The rule in the retirement space is literally going to help tens of millions of people and their families. We've seen with the Wells Fargo debacle that when you create perverse incentives for your workforce that are not aligned with the customer's best interest, perverse incentives create perverse results. And that's what we saw in the retirement space. And so that's why the Department of Labor has such an important mission, and I'm so grateful for my dedicated career colleagues who are here. And so, law is only as good as the will of the people enforcing them. My next lesson is a lesson that I learned early on, and that is the power of persistence. Because you know what? You can never give up in this job. You know the song in the Civil Rights Movement, we fall down, but we get up. The Civil Rights Act of '64 was first introduced in 1948 by Adam Clayton Powell. So many laws have taken so long. And frankly, so many laws that were passed heroically have seen many challenges in recent years. And you will always confront headwinds if you decide to pursue a career in public interest law. And that is the most remarkably challenging and important part of the time. The voting context is one example. I had the privilege of traveling with the president to mark the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, a year and a half ago or so. And at that speech, the president talked about the most important word in a democracy, we. And again, the Voting Rights Act was about the collective power of we. And I could not help but feel bittersweet when I was there. Because on the one hand, I met so many of the titans, many of whom are still alive. John Lewis walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. So many others who who lost their lives in the movement. It's a remarkably inspirational moment. But then I couldn't help but reflect on where we were. Because as we were preparing to mark the 50th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, it is undeniable that we're playing defense against remarkably ill-advised attacks that are inconsistent with our values as a nation. And Pam could go on at great length with great eloquence about these challenges. And the sorriest days and the saddest days of my tenure in government service were certainly the day that the court struck down the heart of the Voting Rights Act, which had enabled us to ensure access to the infrastructure of democracy in so many states. And when I was in Arizona recently, and I saw the primary in Arizona, in which people had to wait hours because, you know why? They took away dozens of polling places, stunningly, most of which were in Latino communities in Maricopa County. And you know what? In the pre-2013 regime, we would have put a stop to that because they would have needed our approval. But they didn't have to get it. And so it should come as no surprise as to what happened. And I see this time and time again as we litigate voter ID issues and voter ID cases. Voter ID cases and the voter ID laws that underlie these cases are plainly and simply about making it harder for African Americans and Latinos to vote. That's what they are. Case in South Carolina when I was still there. There was a remarkable moment in the discovery in which one of the sponsors of the bill, it was an email exchange between him and a constituent. And the constituent said, you know what? If you were to give $100 to these folks and say that for $100 I'll have you come and register to vote, they would come around like bees around watermelon. That's what he said. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out the undercurrent of that one. His answer, what it should have been was, I'm disgusted by this email, sir. But his answer was, amen. Thank you for your response. That's the world we live in. That's the underlying tenor of these laws. And that is why the Civil Rights Division is so relevant. And there were so many other voting cases. The Texas redistricting case, where they made it so hard for African Americans and Latinos to vote. And the court said, in one of my favorite footnotes, footnote 32, I often skip footnotes, until Justice Thomas quoted me by name in a dissent from a fair housing case, and I hung it up on my wall, but I digress. Footnote 32, the parties have provided more evidence of discriminatory intent than we have space or need to address here. That was the essence of that case. And yet, you know what? The court in 2013 said, hey, we're in post-racial America. Wow, I wish they were right. I wish I could be, for those of you over 50, the Maytag repairman, the guy sitting by the phone, waiting for the phone to ring because the Maytag products were so good that it never had to be serviced. Well, our phone has been ringing off the hook in the Civil Rights Division, and our phone is ringing off the hook at the Labor Department. And that brings me again to really my last lesson, and then I'm going to get to the homework. And that lesson is really the lesson of what I call the gyroscope. One of my favorite people that I've gotten to know in this job is a guy named Walter Isaacson, who's a wonderful biographer that I'm sure you're familiar with. Walter once wrote a biography of a guy named Albert Einstein, who I did not get to meet, but I'm told he was pretty smart. And in this biography, he recounts the story of a series of letters that Albert Einstein wrote to his son. And the first letters that Walter recounts are during the McCarthy era, the height of the McCarthy era. And his letter to his son is, what is wrong with this country? I escaped. I fled Nazi Germany to escape Hitler and the xenophobia. And I see in McCarthy and everything he stands for the same underlying pathologies. What is wrong with this country? How are they allowing this to happen? And then you fast forward a year or so later to another letter that he writes to his son in the aftermath of McCarthy being censured and reduced to the dustbin of American history. And he says to his son, what a country! I love this United States. It has this gyroscope. And just when you think that gyroscope is spinning out of control, it rights itself. I love this country. Well, folks, the gyroscope that Walter is referring to, and Albert Einstein is referring to, is not a piece of technology. The gyroscope is that first word of that first dependent clause, the collective power of we. Selma and the Voting Rights Act that followed was all about the collective power of we that said, you know what? We can pass a Voting Rights Act. Our Revolutionary War was the collective power of we. Alexander Hamilton and everybody else working together. But they created a nation that was not perfect. It had the original sin of slavery. And it had no rights for women. And so we fought a civil war to perfect that union. And it still took another 100 years after that war. And it still is ongoing to give meaning to that 13th Amendment and the 14th Amendment and all of these other remarkable pieces of law that have been written by the collective power of we, by the gyroscope. We endured the Know-Nothing movement of the mid-19th century, which was fundamentally anti-Catholic and anti-European immigrant. And we see it resurface from time to time, you might say. And we see it resurface, but you know what? Every time, the Chinese Exclusion Act, we've seen these moments in our nation history where we're having this discussion about what does e pluribus unum mean? Does we the people mean we all the people? Or does it just mean we some of the people? I truly believe it is all of us. And my engagement in public service over the last quarter century has been an unmitigated privilege because you know what? We help people at scale. We continue to fight battles for the heart and soul of this country. We are vindicating day in and day out some basic principles. That opportunity should be available to everyone, no footnotes. I told you I don't read footnotes. And that you should never be judged by the color of your skin or the person that you love or the place that you worship. None of those things, or your gender, or your ethnicity. That's been the search for a more perfect union. And we have gotten there because we've had this gyroscope. And this gyroscope is why I continue to be unrelentingly optimistic about the future of this country. Because someone asked me the other day, what do you like the most about your job? What I like the most about my job are the people I meet. I meet people who got kicked to the side of the road in the depths of this recession, and they dusted themselves up. They got back up, and they're back, and they got their mojo back. They got their job back. They got their dignity back. I meet people in the civil rights context who were victims of predatory lending, the corrosive power of fine print that transformed the American dream and the American nightmare, and the knowledge that we were able to do something about it. That's what the gyroscope's about. And that is why, to Terry, to the Levin family, that's why I'm so grateful. Because I'm getting old. And, we need to build this next generation of folks who are going to carry that gyroscope, who are going to lead that gyroscope. And that leads me to my homework assignment, folks. And I told you I was going to give you one. And this is the assignment I used to give my students the second last day of class. And it was this. I asked them to write their own obituary. And the reason I asked it is because my experience working with law students and lawyers is that they're, meaning no disrespect, but they're disproportionately risk averse. Okay? Some people, why are you going to law school? Well, it just seemed like the right thing to do. And so the purpose in this was to get you to have a little bit of self-reflection on why you were put on the planet Earth. And I still get emails once in a while from former students who say, you know what, I'm glad you did that because I found it in my drawer. And you know what, I had another friend, his name is Randy Lewis. He was a big shot at Walgreens, father of a son with a disability. And the privilege of raising that son taught him that we focus too much on the first 3 letters of the word disability and not enough on the last 7. And so he singularly changed the business model of Walgreens. And I visited one of their distribution facilities in Connecticut. Distributes products from Maine to Baltimore. Totally integrated workforce, 40% people with disabilities, working side by side with their colleagues, making good money. And that was the most productive facility in the country. And what he said to me, Tom, I'm in the business community, you're in public service. We play different instruments, but you know what? We're in the same orchestra. And the obituary assignment is to get you to figure out, I don't care what instrument you play. I'd love for you to come into government service because, we don't get rich in government service. Or if you do, the IG is going to be on your case. But the non-monetary rewards for my wife, who has worked as a legal aid lawyer her entire career, and I, have been priceless. And so I hope you'll get into that part of the orchestra. But you know what? I would love for you to be the next Randy Lewis and use your perch in corporate America to ensure that we build a stakeholder model of governance so that we're not genuflecting at the altar of quarterly earnings, which is not required. And what we see, and the reason I go to more business schools than law schools these days, is I want to work with the next generation of business leaders so that we know that, you know what, The stakeholder model of governance is what will bring us a virtuous cycle. And the stakeholder model says that shareholders are best served when all stakeholders are well served. When we reject those false choices, I either take care of my worker, or I take care of my shareholder, or I take care of my customer, or I take care of my supply chain. I can give you endless examples of folks who reject those false choices. So maybe you'll go into corporate America, but make sure you stay in the orchestra, because you can do so much good in corporate America. Maybe you'll go somewhere else. But we need you to ask that question now. Why were you put on the planet Earth? And when you graduate from this law school, the sky's the limit. You're going to have opportunities up the wazoo. Opportunities that you've earned. And I hope as you make those choices moving forward, that you will keep in mind that the orchestra needs more players. I don't care what instrument you play, but you know what? The more people that are in the band, the better the sound. And the sound is when we continue to form that more perfect union. I guarantee you that the non-monetary rewards of the choices you make, should you consider staying in public service, are indeed priceless. They've been priceless for me, they've been priceless for my wife, and I'm confident they will be priceless for you. It's like the president said at a graduation ceremony at Howard University, you have to go through life with more than just passion for change. You need a strategy. I'll repeat that. I want you to have passion, but you have to have a strategy. Not just awareness, but action. Not just hashtags, but votes. So hashtag public service. That's okay. But make sure you're in the orchestra wherever you are. And thank you again. This is a humbling honor, and I am confident that I am looking at a future boss of mine in this room, because that's what you produce, is that pipeline, Dean. Thank you very much.
Secretary Perez, I think you've been out of the classroom a little while. The students here want to know, is that assignment graded? Pass, fail, pass, fail. Thank you for those incredibly inspiring remarks, both you and Salena. What a wonderful evening, and thank you all for being with us. Good night.